Today we will be covering a controversial movie called Mandingo. It is excruciating in its depiction of slavery, so fair warning. The movie begins with Brownlee, a slave trader inspecting slaves. Brownlee looks at a short king looking like Kevin Hart. Warren Maxwell is selling them and tells Brownlee which ones are the hardest working. For 3 of them, Warren gets $2,500. When they're done, Warren's son, Hammond, warns his father about Big Pearl, who is being attended to by their trusted doctor. The doctor tells them there is nothing wrong with Big Pearl, except that she's simply itching to be taken. The doctor prescribes for her to be taken advantage of, which he says is Hammond's responsibility to help provide. However, she cries because them white pasty people just making shit up. Not long after that, the Maxwells share a meal with friends and talk about the uprisings happening all over the country. Warren says slavery was ordained by God himself. Hammond tells him to calm down because his rheumatism will flare up. It makes Warren even more angry because he's actually frustrated that he can do nothing about it. One of their friends then suggests using one of his slaves' bellies as a footrest so the rheumatism will magically drain and transfer there. And just like today, racists refuse to follow science. Finished with his meal, Hammond gets up and asks one of the slaves to get Big Pearl ready for their private time together. When he leaves, his father's friend says Hammond seems like a good boy and reckons he'll make a good stud. Somewhat troubled, Warren reveals that Hammond is a little shy because of his leg problems. He says a pony stepped on his knee when he was still small, resulting in his current disability. Meanwhile, Hammond goes to meet Big Pearl, who is being prepped for their session. He gets to work on providing her what the doctor prescribed, taking advantage of the poor girl. While that happens, a young boy tries to sneak a peek from the door to see what's up. He gets a pinch on the ears for being a sneaky little bugger. Elsewhere in the estate, Cicero says he's disappointed with his fellow slaves for not standing up for themselves. Cicero asks Mem to read something in front of the others, hoping it will educate and inspire them to take action. After taking advantage of Big Pearl, Hammond catches the slaves in the act and discovers that Mem actually knows how to read. Meanwhile, the doctor gets Warren to rest his feet on a slave to heal Warren from his bone spurs. Then Hammond reports what he saw to his father, which angers him because he doesn't want his slaves to be educated, just like someone in the Oval Office. Warren orders Hammond to punish Mem by taking out one of his eyes. However, Hammond protests, saying that a simple whooping will suffice. When Hammond goes to bed another slave, Dite, she asks if she can keep the child when she gives birth. However, Hammond says they're going to sell it for her own good. Well, Hammond, your ass should have been aborted. The next day, Hammond hangs Mem upside down and punishes him. Surprisingly, Hammond a bitch ass and doesn't have the stomach for it, so he goes outside in the middle of it. Not long after, a man arrives who takes over and punishes Mem more intensely. Hammond sees this and rushes to stop the man, who reveals himself as his cousin Charles. Afterwards, Warren pushes a slave boy to be his footrest to try more of RFK Jr.'s recommendation for his ailment. Then Warren reveals that Charles is there because his family wants to borrow money. In exchange, they are willing to marry off Hammond's cousin Blanche to Hammond. See, I just knew these people were inbred AF. At first, Hammond protests, saying he knows nothing about marriage. However, Warren is adamant that Hammond marries because he already wants him to sire an heir, so he sends him away to claim his cousin Blanche as his wife. On their way back to Charles's home, Hammond and Charles stop by Mr. Wallace's estate to acquire a partner for Big Pearl. Sadly, Mr. Wallace says he has already lost the man Hammond wanted for Big Pearl. Later that night, Mr. Wallace brings young women to keep Hammond and Charles company for the night. Charles immediately gets rough with his partner, causing Hammond to feel sick and leave for the other room. Ellen follows Hammond and starts looking at him weirdly. Insecure, Hammond calls her out, thinking it's because of his DEI disabled leg. However, Ellen says she finds him strange because he seems to care about what would happen to them. As the two continue to talk, Hammond gently persuades Ellen to bed him. The next day, Hammond goes to an auction for slaves, where he finds what they call a pure mandingo being auctioned off for a hefty price. A lady steps up to check on the man and if his package is what she's looking for. Satisfied, she offers to buy the man, but Hammond manages to outbid her and snag the prize man for himself. Hammond celebrates and learns that the man's name is Meade. He also says that he'll pick him up after a few days. After the auction, Hammond arrives at Charles's home and finally meets his cousin Blanche, looking like Nellie Olson from Little House on the Prairie. For some reason, Charles doesn't seem comfortable with the idea of having his cousin marry his sister. He confronts Blanche, saying he'll tell Hammond about their Alabama escapades. Blanche says she wants to marry Hammond because he's a prize catch. Girl, we saw what that man equipped with. He ain't carrying much. She also tells Charles she wants to leave their home and family for good. Blanche and Hammond get to talking, and Hammond makes it clear that he intends to marry her. When Hammond tries to kiss Blanche, she tells him not to unless it's just a cousin kiss. Girl, what in the inbred cousin's wife is this? Since he intends to put a ring on it, Hammond gives Blanche more than just a cousin kiss. Not long after that, the two are already on their way to their honeymoon. Apparently, it's his first time trying vanilla flavor, and he don't know what to do with her flat ass. After their first romantic night together, Hammond becomes restless and troubled. Blanche asks him what's wrong, and he confronts her, saying he knows she has been touched by another man before him. Blanche throws a tantrum to try and deny that she was touched by another man. Sure, John. As for Hammond, he leaves and tries to cool his head off by visiting a local brothel. A girl that looks exactly like Blanche tries to hit on Hammond, but Hammond swerves the hoe. While there, Meade gets into a fight with the brothel's bodyguard. They try to break up the fight but stop when a rich man named DeVive says he'll give $1,000 to the winner. Everyone goes into a frenzy as they bet on the fight. Meade comes out on top and Hammond is extremely happy about it. DeVive offers to buy Meade for twice the price he was bought, but Hammond declines the offer. So instead, DeVive asks him to let Meade fight his fighter in a few months, and Hammond agrees. On their way home, Hammond stops by Mr. Wallace's place to hire Ellen. Curious, Blanche asks if Ellen is to become Meade's partner, and Hammond tells her no. Blanche immediately realizes that what she's looking at is her competition. Bitch, that man into black women. They not like us? They not like us. When the couple finally arrives home, Hammond tells Blanche they'll pretend to be a happy couple in front of his father. Everyone is excited to see Hammond come home with Blanche. Warren, in particular, is ecstatic that his son came home with a wife and a pure mandingo. Shortly after, Hammond and Blanche get right into being a married couple, arguing about what they finna order through DoorDash. He decides never to sleep in the same room with Blanche. In return, she calls him out for wanting to sleep with Ellen instead. Hammond shows off Meade to his father, who inspects him carefully. They immediately pair Meade up with Big Pearl and start training him for his upcoming fight. On one occasion, Warren lets Meade bathe in a huge pot of hot water. Hammond is worried, but Warren says it's a good way to toughen Meade's hide in preparation for the fight. After one of their sparring sessions, Hammond praises Meade for his excellent performance. When Hammond gets into the house, he gets scolded by Warren for neglecting his husbandly duties to Blanche. He tells him to get down to business because he wants a grandchild. Hammond goes to Blanche's room for the sake of his father's request. Blanche begs for Hammond to touch her because her kitty purring. Hammond says she a strange-ass white lady and leaves her be and spends the night with Ellen instead. While they lay in bed, Ellen tells Hammond she's with child. She then asks if he can give her son freedom when the time comes. Hammond initially gets angry and declines her request, but eventually changes his mind when he sees Ellen upset. One day, Mr. Wallace comes to the Maxwell's estate to inform them that Cicero started an uprising. Hammond rides with Meade to help Mr. Wallace deal with Cicero and his men hiding in a barn. Cicero gets shot while trying to escape, and Hammond sends Meade to catch him. Meade manages to hold Cicero long enough for the rest of the group to capture him. After that, Mr. Wallace's men prepare to hang Cicero. During that time, Cicero blames Meade for his capture and says his death will be in Meade's hands. As Cicero hangs, Hammond becomes uncomfortable and leaves with Meade. The time for Meade's scheduled fight arrives, so Hammond and Warren leave the estate with him. During that time, Blanche tells one of their maids to bring Ellen to her. While waiting, she takes out her riding whip and tests it out on the furniture. Realizing what Blanche plans to do, the maid tells her that Ellen is pregnant. Sadly, it only infuriates Blanche even more because she knows it's Hammond's child Ellen is carrying. Blanche lashes out at Ellen, promising to beat her child out of her womb. Ellen tries to run away, but Blanche catches her and pushes her down the stairs, resulting in her miscarriage. I just want to pull Blanche's nose hairs one by one. Meade's fight with DeVive's prize fighter Topaz begins. Meade immediately finds himself at a disadvantage because of Topaz's boxing training. Eventually, Hammond can no longer stomach the beating that Meade is taking and tries to surrender the fight. Unwilling to let Hammond lose face with his defeat, Meade channels his inner vampire and defeats Topaz. DeVive congratulates Hammond and, this time, offers to buy Meade for $10,000. To Warren's disappointment, Hammond declines DeVive's offer yet again. On their way home, Warren shows Hammond some jewelry he wants him to give Blanche as a present. When they arrive, the head maid immediately informs Warren about what Blanche did to Ellen. Warren immediately checks on Ellen and orders her to never tell Hammond what truly happened to avoid further conflict. When Hammond enters the room, Warren tells him that Ellen accidentally fell and had a miscarriage. Hammond immediately comforts Ellen, who honors Warren's request out of fear. However, she starts feeling better when Hammond gives her a pair of ruby earrings. Meanwhile, Warren goes upstairs to scold Blanche for her recent unladylike behavior. When Hammond joins them, He tells his son to give Blanche her presents and get to work on making him his grandchild. Blanche is happy that she got a wonderful ruby necklace as a present. She immediately wears it during dinner and happily talks about what she wants to do once they have a new house. Hearing her, Warren plans to sell off some of their slaves the next day to turn her dreams into a reality. Sadly, Blanche's enthusiasm quickly goes out the window when she notices Ellen wearing ruby earrings that matches her necklace. She takes off her necklace and storms out of the room. She'd rather have a pearl one from Hammond. Hammond goes after Blanche, and they have a heated fight. During that time, Blanche accidentally confirms that her brother Charles was the one who touched her before Hammond, which makes him leave her immediately. Blanche tries to explain that she was just 13 when it happened. The next day, Warren tries to separate a mother and child to sell the child off. Hammond intervenes and keeps the pair together. However, as he leaves with the rest of the slaves, a woman cries as she's separated from her family. He takes Ellen to accompany him through the journey. A scornful Blanche sees this and finally decides to get back at her husband. Blanche summons Meade to her room. Mem tries to tell Meade not to enter the room, but since he respects Hammond, he follows what his wife tells him to do. Once inside, Blanche tells Meade to do whatever she tells him to, because if not, she'll lie to Hammond, saying that Meade forced himself on her. With Meade's submission, Blanche helps herself to Meade. Since there's nothing he can do to stop her, Meade decides to go with it. When Hammond returns, he learns Big Pearl and Meade's child has arrived and is happy about it. He then notices that Meade is acting a little strange. Later, Hammond also wonders why Blanche is acting a little too ladylike and kind toward him. Eventually, she reveals she's pregnant, which makes Warren happy, and Hammond starts caring about her more. The next day, Hammond notices that Ellen is jealous of Blanche's baby, so he ensures her that she will always be his woman, no matter what happens. Time passes, and Blanche gives birth. Maury Povich decides to make an appearance because the baby is clearly mixed. The nurse tells Warren the outcome, and he decides to have the baby killed. The baby is put in the crib while Blanche begs to see her child. Hammond goes to see the child, and he's more shocked to see that the baby isn't his than to see that the baby is dead. Unable to bear the taste of his own medicine, he decides to give Blanche a poisonous drink. The next day, Hammond wields his rifle and makes his way to confront Meade. Ellen tries to stop him, but he reminds her of the truth and her true place in this life. Hammond and Warren make Meade prepare his own pot. When Hammond orders Meade to get into the water, he declines. He tries to tell Hammond that he was only following Blanche's orders and that he didn't mean any disrespect. Angered, Hammond shoots Meade in the shoulder. Meade expresses his disappointment, saying that he thought Hammond was different from the others. Hammond shoots Meade again, and as he falls into the boiling water, tries to finish him off using a pitchfork. Mem tries to stop Hammond, but he pushes him to the ground. In response, Mem picks up Hammond's rifle and points it at him. Warren calls Mem the N-word, but he gets a bullet to the chest instead. Mem then makes a run for it, while Hammond is left mourning his father and wondering where his life went wrong. Probably when you started owning slaves and being complicit in their torture. This is a highly controversial film during its time because it was seen as a black exploitation film. However, it did really show the realities of slavery at its core. It's not as graphic as Django Unchained, but still a difficult watch. What did you guys think of this one?
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.